Okay, everyone, welcome to the first meeting of 2021 of the Nantucket Historical Commission. I'm going to start by reading this script. This is Hillary Hedges-Rayport, Chair of the Nantucket Historical Commission. I'm going to go ahead and read some of the script, and then I'll confirm that everyone's here because we're still waiting for some people to join. This open meeting of the Historical Commission is being conducted remotely, consistent with the executive order of March 12, 2020 due to COVID. We're advised to suspend public gatherings. We're meeting remotely. Ensuring public access does not ensure public participation unless it's required by law. We will have public comment if anybody cares from the public comes and cares to make a comment. The meeting of the Historical Commission is convening by Zoom, and the instructions of how you can join are posted on our webpage on the town's website. The link is in our agenda. The meeting is being recorded. All attendees are participating by video conference. Let me just see if, okay. So be aware that other people can see you. Take care not to screen share your computer. Anything you broadcast may be captured by the recording. All meeting materials are available on the town's website. Please follow along using the agenda. So here's some ground rules. Please remember to mute your phone or your computer when you're not speaking. Speak clearly so that we can generate accurate minutes. Please wait until the chair or the speaker yields the floor to you. State your name before speaking. If you wish to engage in a conversation with other members, please do so through the chair, taking care to identify yourself. Every vote in the meeting will be taken by roll call vote. I am now going to, it looks like we're still waiting for a few people to join, but we do have a quorum. So I'm going to go ahead and take a roll call of the members of the commission who are here. We have Tom Montgomery. Can you hear me?
Here.
Great. We have Mickey Rowland. Can
Here.
you hear me?
Yeah.
We have David Silver.
Here.
Great. And Hillary Hedges-Rayport. I am here, and one of our guests, Brian Pfeiffer, is also here. And I have people asking me to resend the link. So if you'll just give me a minute, I will. Oh, here's, okay, we have another guest coming in. Hi, Deanne, welcome. Hi, oh, that's Angus. Hi, Angus. Welcome. And Clement was just asking me to resend the link. Actually, is there anybody who could send the link to Clement while I proceed with the meeting?
I can re-forward it to everybody.
Okay, thanks very much. Okay, so public comment. Does anybody have, we have Brian here, which we're expecting. I don't see any members of the public, so we have no public comment. Minutes, everybody took a bit of a vacation. We've been working our minute taker extremely hard, David. So we don't have any minutes yet for December 18th, and we'll get those ready and approve them at the next meeting. Announcements. I do have some announcements. So there will be, Holly wanted me to let everybody know that on the 15th of January at 1 p.m., the HCC is hearing from the Resilient Nantucket people. That of course will be on Zoom. If we do want to actually participate, more than 4 of us will need to post the meeting. So if you could just let me or Holly know if you plan to attend and really want to participate. We can attend the public meeting as long as we don't like deliberate among ourselves. So that would be at 1 p.m. on the 15th. We actually have a meeting on the 15th at 10 a.m. That will end at 12. And so then if you want to go on and join the HCC for Resilient Nantucket and the guidelines that they're developing, that's happening then. I also wanted to announce that I saw the Nantucket Historical Association has an event tonight at 5:30. where Mary Lynn Rainey, an archaeologist who's studied Nantucket for quite some time, will be talking about their initiative to catalog and display their colonial and Native American artifacts. They received a $190,000 grant from a cultural institution, I think it's Museum and Libraries Association, to really work and organize their archaeological finds that they have in their collection. They have thousands of items. So she's going to be talking about this, and this is something that our commission has been interested in some time, and we're trying to we have on our list to do, our long to-do list, that we'd like to figure out what we should be doing more to help Nantucket's archaeological resources. So that might be a good thing to join. I'm certainly going to try to join it. Okay, so Clement, can you hear me? I guess you can, or you'd be waving or something. Hi, thank you, welcome. The first item on the agenda is the Wilkes Square Harbor Place redevelopment. So we finished the report. You've all had a chance to see the new introduction, which you hadn't seen before. And the feedback happened at the NP and EDC meeting on December 21st, to the extent that you could consider that feedback. Anyway, the report is out there, and I expect it's just going to be a little while for the town and the various commissions to digest it. Any comments or thoughts about what we should be doing next on this project? Let's have a discussion about it. Angus.
I was in the beginning of that meeting, and then I had to get off. So anyway, I so appreciate your participation in it, and it did seem like it was well received. And so I was happy about that. As far as next steps, I've been working with Marty and an associate of his with Penn, drawing on more information about downtown and heights of buildings and so forth. And so that's still in progress. And I think, yeah, I think that'll be helpful. But I think also we'll want to wait for cues from the town of, you know, actually doing a study. But I think it's most helpful in taking a deeper look at what exists in order to really project what we want to be consistent with.
Yes. Just so everyone knows, I also saw those scans, Angus, from the Preservation Institute Nantucket, and we should circulate them and maybe even put, I guess we can ask if we can put that up, or maybe put them in our materials just so they're available to the public. The scans, we have one scan, it's an elevation of Main Street in the Harbour Place report, and the Preservation Institute Nantucket shared other scans that they had done of Easy Street. They're really amazing. I mean, they can capture with this laser every detail of the building, the ground cover, the height. So this question of, oh, well, 30 feet isn't that high, or, you know, buildings should be more than 30 feet. You can really understand when you have the information about what is built, how different a 40-foot tall building really is. I would love to hear Mickey and Angus comment a little bit more about what we learned from the few scans that we saw. I don't know if you saw, I had a question about why the heights weren't measured from the very top of the ridge line.
I think that might have been the first draft that they sent, and I had asked for them to send another one with the lowest and the highest building heights, just to get a visual on what, you know, a one-story building is versus a 2 or 2.5 story building. Unfortunately, Easy Street is not the greatest example. I'd rather see Broad Street to Main Street on Federal. I'd rather see India Street south or east of Center Street. I'd rather see Center Street. But I think that it's helpful in that it just shows what we have in one area of town. More areas will follow, but I'm not sure when exactly. So that's where we are with that.
You know, I just realized I can share my screen and show them. Why don't I take a minute to do that? I just think, in addition to the municipal harbor plan and the public access, can you guys see my screen and see this map?
Yep.
Okay. This question of how the commercial downtown zoning is being recommended as perfect for downtown and representative of downtown, these scans show how varied heights are. Okay, so this is Easy Street. This is that Easy Street basin. Broad Street is over here. And this is the building where Susan Lister Lock is, right? This one that says highest building. Is that correct?
That's right.
So you can see that that building, now this was my question. So this is 24 feet.
So what they've done here is to go to the middle of the roof. So half of the roof is below that and half of it is above, and it's a little bit confusing. It would be
Right.
more
Well, it's
effective.
like so if this is 18, this looks like it's another 4 feet. So this is 28 feet, right?
Or
roughly.
6 feet from 18 to 24.
Oh, sorry, 6 feet.
And
Okay,
then-
right. So this is 30 feet.
30 feet.
Yeah.
And that is one of the highest, that's one of the highest first floors we have there. And I believe that the development of the building adjacent to that, to the left of the building you're talking about, is about to be completely redone by Robert Young.
And then down here, this building is gone. These were the old bathhouses, that little cottage. That's now the Land Bank Park. It's sad.
Sorry to see that bathhouse go.
I know, it was so cute. I'm sure the park will be lovely, but too bad we couldn't have both. Okay, so then this is the Dreamland here, right? Highest building.
Right.
And I think we have another shot where they show us. Okay, so then this is Main Street. This is this 22-foot one. Where is that the side of the old Hardee's?
That's the back side of the old Hardee's, the water
Yeah.
company.
Yeah. Okay, so here you see the Pacific Club. And it's, I don't know why they did the midline of the roof is 33. So the ridge line is probably 37. So at 37 feet, you are really towering over all the other buildings downtown. Because you can see how much these buildings that are tall, and tall is 30 to 40 feet, tower, just dominate everything else. Even this building, which looks massive, this is the parking lot of Stop and Shop. This is Candle Street. This building looks massive. It actually is like 34 feet tall.
And part of what makes this whole thing work is when you have the tall buildings, like the Pacific Club, then you have a lower building like the Club Car across the way to the east of that is, a relatively new building, and which is higher. But it's all about the graduation of buildings that make it successful.
Yeah.
I think what we want is to make sure that the zoning doesn't allow really tall buildings to be everywhere, but maybe as an exception, which is what we have downtown. There's a lot of tall buildings, but they stand out as exceptions, not the general rule.
Yeah. Well, I think we made that point in our report.
Yeah.
And, one of the things that was discussed in past meetings is, well, like Dawn Hill-Holgate asked Holly if she was going to be looking more closely and doing measurements or zoning. And then the question is, well, should we do it? Should we somehow engage a consultant to do it? And this, my view, having reflected, and I'd love to know if you guys agree, this responsibility lies with the planning department. This is why we have a planning department. And the planning commission, not the planning commission, which is the NP and EDC, is the group that directs the planning department. So what I tried to say, and I hope I was clear when they asked me to come in, with 2 hours notice to be a panelist, was that like we really need a zoning study, and this is the sort of thing you want to look for. Is there anything else you all think we should be doing at this point, that our commission should be doing at this point?
One thing, in our at the end of your report today, you list the projects that we have, and one of them is the design review, zoning review. And I was looking at that, thinking about just what we're talking about now. And I think that, I don't know who would be responsible, but I think it would be an important study to look at how the existing, and I think this is a preservation issue, how the proposed and existing zoning could allow for a change in the character of downtown. And I think that that's definitely a preservation concern. So I think that it would be important for us to study the existing density, height, setbacks, things that really affect the character of downtown, and see how they relate to what's really allowed under CDT.
Yeah. Any other comments?
Could you put up the sketch, if we are looking from the water at the new development, where there's a street that goes directly looking right up at the town clock?
Oh, you mean from the Wilkes Square report?
Yes.
Did I have that in my Harbor Place report, or do I need to find the Wilkes Square report?
I don't know.
I think you need to find the Wilkes Square report. Sorry, Hillary, because I don't think that.
I was going to make this comment before. I should have done it the last meeting.
Yeah, but I think we all know what you're talking about. Go ahead and describe it.
Well, it seems to me that that's a central point. It's almost like the middle of the living room, if you will, where the mantelpiece is. And but it isn't the middle. It's off to the south of all of this. And I'm just wondering how everybody, feels about that, or if anybody, has anything to say at all.
I'm not sure I understand your question.
So when you look at the whole development and the way it's planned out, all this,
well, there's
the streets
but,
going, the streets are going, north and south and east and west, and you have certain buildings here and certain buildings there, and we're trying to make some sense of what it's going to look like down there. There's an alley, so to speak, that comes right from Wilkes Square and goes right up, viewing at the town clock. It's like one of the major focal points for your eye.
Yeah.
When you
that's Steeple Street. Yeah.
Steeple Street.
Yeah.
And I'm just wondering, but is that in the middle of all this? I don't think it is.
Well, but Tom, the thing is none of that was just someone's vision. So none of that is.
That's why I'm asking that.
Yeah. And I think it's just so a couple of comments. I mean, I think what we're trying to do as a commission is to make sure that when we talk about planning, we're talking about preservation planning and thinking about how anything that is proposed or any zoning that is passed is going to affect our historic town, which, Tom, is I think what you're saying is that if this all gets built, how does that change the center? How does that change like the weight, the center of gravity of our historic town, which is absolutely the question. And but we can't really react to anything because at this point, there's nothing to react to. The only thing that there is to react, the only thing to do is to assemble everything that can be known, prioritize vectors, the decision vectors. What are the criteria around which decisions could be made? And if the planning department puts something forward, or, the other thing that could happen here is that the developer sorry, I shouldn't say the developer, the property owner could, I think the property owner could decide they want to develop something, and they could take it to the zoning board of appeals and ask for different zoning on their parcel. Who knows about that? Am I right about that? Isn't that how it would work? If you didn't like the zoning that you had, because the zoning was RC with a 30-foot maximum height, 5,000 square foot lot, 50% ground coverage, and you wanted to build something more intense, and the town was never able to change it to VDT, as the property owner, you could go to the zoning board, to the planning department, and ask for a waiver. They couldn't give a waiver because it's a strict 30-foot height limit. Could you go to the ZBA and ask them?
You can, but it's, that's probably asking for a variance, which are very hard to get as opposed to a special permit. And you need,
I see.
usually you need some sort of, forget the terms, but it's a hardship because of the shape of the lot or some specific hardship. So variances aren't handed out too often, but you never know.
I see. So I think this report prepares other commissions, other elected officials, other interested parties with the information they need. But to answer Tom's question about, is it right that Steeple Street should exist, and how would that change the center of gravity of our historic town? I just don't think we can answer any of these questions until something is put on the table. And I think Mickey's question, or Mickey's, recommendation really, which is that there should be a zoning study that really looks at how our zoning is affecting our downtown, and if we're still comfortable with it, if it's still something we recommend and support. Yeah, I think that is absolutely the fundamental question.
That's what got me rethinking about that and why I asked that, but you put it better than I did.
Well,
She always does.
oh,
Well,
please, guys.
No, I know, Hillary, but the thing I love about this report is that you're taking the information we've been given. You've done a lot of research about the history of this area, and identifying who owns what, and potentially maybe what they want to do with it. You've always said in everything, one of the most important things is moving cars and buses and whatever around in that area. But and you've also said we are not transportation experts. So I think all of that helps to say that this is what we're concerned with. This is what we find interesting. This is how we could help, where we can help, and we would love to help, but we are not transportation experts. So I think that falls on the town or whoever is going to make up whatever they want to do next to come up with a good idea, knowing that we are going to be watching. The thing I love about this area is when you look at the Thomas Macy warehouse, which has got to be one of the highest buildings down there. And then you've got one of the shortest buildings right next to it with the ice cream parlor. And if you really think about it, it looks haphazard, but I'm sure it was not. So I just think all of that is fascinating. And as if, Angus has got all these volumes and setbacks and all that stuff, so we could figure out what feels historic and haphazard, but is really well thought through. That's where I think it's all going.
I agree, Clement, and I think it's a time for us to just rest and let the rest of the community digest this.
Catch up. Yeah, I agree. I think so.
We really need we can make a request for a zoning study. We have made that request. So why don't we just monitor this for a little while, and follow up, make sure we revisit it in a couple months. Keep monitoring what folks are doing and asking questions and talking to people about it. But I don't think there's any specific next steps. I mean, we've shared it really broadly. So I think we should, I'd like to have a motion to accept this as our final report. There was Clement caught a tiny typo, which I fixed. If anyone else has any typos, let me know. But it's the introduction, the report, and 2 items in the appendix, which is the something from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts regulations about Commonwealth tidelands, and also the Chapter 91 license. So could I have a motion to accept this report?
So move that we do that.
Thank you, Tom. A second. Angus, thank you. All in favor, Clement?
Aye.
Mickey?
Aye.
And I am also an aye. So, one thing I wanted to mention though, Tom, I know you're active with the Shellfish Association. I didn't send this to the Shellfish Association, but I think the work on municipal harbor plans is highly relevant to them.
Correct.
And I really hope we've gotten the message across how critical it is that Nantucket update its municipal harbor plan and include in that harbor plan all of the ecological considerations about the harbor, but also the development of the Commonwealth tidelands that surround our harbor, and that we work together across all of these different interests to make sure that that's done right. And the Shellfish Advisory Group could have a very powerful voice there with the working waterfront, which is a key part of the Chapter 91 legislation.
The people to inform that is Bruce Benny and Kevin Kusler, as you know.
Okay, all right. I'll go ahead and reach out to them about that, and maybe they'd want us to come to a meeting and talk a little bit about it. The other thing that is the next step from this is that the Coastal Resiliency Advisory Commission would like to have a joint meeting with us to discuss the area, and they will join our Friday, February 19th meeting. So never fear, we're all communicating about that. Okay, any final comments about Harbor Place at this point?
Hillary, we talked about different people or groups to send this information to. What about like the downtown, like the town association or the civic association? Those people would be interested just because of the commercial implications.
Yes, I can reach out to Henry Terry and also send this to the president of the Civic League.
Right. Good.
It's a good idea. Okay. All right. So moving on to sidewalks and historic streets. We have, going to get this up on the screen. All right, we have this report, Preserving Historic Pavement on Nantucket, Information and Guidelines for Preservation and Maintenance. So I wanted you all to see the letter and just have a chance to really look at this document, which I'd like to finalize. I also did send it to, so this discussion that we want to have now is about this document, but also the next steps in our priority of protecting the historic pavement. So I sent it to Dawn and the whole select board, and Libby, I haven't heard anything back. I'm sure everyone's getting back from their 2-week holiday and getting up to speed on lots of things that are even more urgent than protecting pavement. but I did share my communication, and I am very much thinking about how we can make sure this doesn't just get forgotten. I view this as unfinished business at the select board because they prioritized it in 2019 and asked for guidelines. So we want to finish that. So comments on this report, typos, changes, comfort level with the letter, all those things. And by the way, we have Georgia joining us now. Georgia, can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
Hi. Great.
Sorry to be late, but here I am.
Okay, no problem. Okay, so we're talking about and getting feedback on the report on sidewalks. Anyone want to go first? Okay, shall I ask for a motion to accept the report?
Well, no, Hillary, I'll just say I read it closely. I saw no typos. I'm actually extremely proud of this report. I had nothing to do with it, but I want to compliment those who did. I like your opening letter. I like the whole thing. So I think we should be honored to have put this forward. So I will move, if no one else wants to say anything, to accept this report.
Second.
But let's, I just want to make sure everyone's invited to make a comment since we are on Zoom, but thank you, Clement. Thank you. Tom, starting with you, did you want to make any comment about?
I would have said exactly what Clement just said.
Okay. Mickey?
I completely agree. I think it's a fabulous report, and I hope that it'll be of value to other, communities throughout the country or elsewhere. So I think it's great.
Georgia?
I agree with what has been said. And I also think, considering Hillary, that when I first met you, we were sitting next to each other at a select board meeting in which we were talking about how they were going to restore the cobblestones in front of your house in that area in Upper Main Street. And all of this began because of that letter to the board about the proposed paving of the area of of Main Street underneath the cobblestones that was being put forth at the time. I think we've just come 180 degrees in the correct direction, and this is a fabulous result, both for us and for other communities that have cobbled streets. So congratulations. It was really brilliant to have gotten to this point from that point in a relatively short period of time, given how these things usually move glacially. So good work.
Glacial is a perfect choice of words, Georgia.
Right.
Where would we be without the glaciers?
Right.
Or cobblestones go? David, I'm seeing you and I'm realizing I don't think I asked you to vote in the roll call about Harbor Place. Okay, so you're giving me a thumbs up.
You're good. I have it reflected in the minutes.
Okay, because you are taking the minutes, so you can reflect your vote. Okay, so now I won't. Thanks. I won't miss you to comment on the streetscape report.
Yeah, no, I think it's an incredibly comprehensive report. It's very impressive, and it's quite easy to digest. So I think that it's a good tool, and I'm just happy to have helped out. And Hillary, thank you for the hard work on this. This is awesome.
Thank you. And Angus.
I would just echo everything that has been said. It's an exceptional document. It's informative. It's accessible. There's depth to it. Hopefully, it'll be helpful here. And this would have been a document that we would have searched out across the country for to help us. So hopefully, as has been pointed out before, this will be helpful to other communities who are looking to preserve their sidewalks and streets.
Thank you. Brian is on mute with his camera off, but Brian, are you there? I mean, Brian has been so instrumental to the creation of this report. I've certainly had a master class in preservation from Brian over the last 18 months. So I just want to publicly thank him report. I mean, we thank you in the report, Brian, but really like this is sort of transcribing a lot of stuff you've said over the years. So, you know, one question I have for the commission and for Brian is I took the liberty of, I had some reason to communicate with Lisa Craig, who was one of our trainers at our recent camp. And I took the liberty of sending this to her. And she had a very interesting comment, which is this going to be added to Building with Nantucket in mind? Because it certainly seems like an expansion of the design guidelines and for public spaces, but also for private activity with paving. And, you know, we know all the time that given how close buildings can be to the streets in the old historic district, people do find themselves digging up sidewalks and then putting them back under the guidance of the HDC. And I thought, you know, I had never really, I mean, of course, we've thought of these as design guidelines and they say guidelines, but I've never really thought of this as how do we integrate it with our existing design guidelines. And even the fact that like we really aren't the people who create the design guidelines for the HDC. Tom, I see you have a hand up.
Because this is my street I'm speaking about, it's only because it's in my face. I'm just using it as an example. But what about, you know, with this being talked about as part of Building with Nantucket in mind, the guys that are doing the sewer system and the water system, they're redoing it on my street. They've torn up all the sidewalks, and because the street is composed of many different materials that make up the sidewalks as well as the curbs. We have some of the schist stuff here. We have granite here. We have cement. We have you know, the newer things that are really sharp and tight that we all hate. It's just there's a whole potpourri of stuff on this street. And when they're done in June, just digging the street up, then they're going to get the first coat of hot top, and then they put in the curbs. And I'm just wondering, what we're talking about here, are we really giving this direction for the town, or are we giving these directions for you know, private concerns that are going to be doing it, or to people that want to change the front of their house and as it goes to the street, or what? Because North Liberty Street being one of the older streets on the island, I would think that, you know, they would want to, you know, put the curbs back more in keeping. But the trouble is, it's been made up of so many different kinds of things. I've gone around and taken pictures of all those. And I just don't know, because in some places, it doesn't really make any sense to have any sidewalk or curb at all, because the street's only 11 feet wide and it's impossible for two cars to pass each other anyway. And one of those spots happens to be in front of my house. We wanted a curb and a sidewalk, but you know, it just doesn't work. And further down the street, you know, where it gets really narrow down by Woodbury Lane. And so how do you address that?
Well, I think what we tried to develop, which is why this, you know, Lisa's reaction, having seen it for the first time, was, well, this is, you know, relates directly to Building with Nantucket in mind, and you should have, you know, one set of design guidelines, not proliferating design guidelines, is that we tried to create a flexible, instructive framework for people whose work is either, you know, pavement reconstruction is the center of the work, or pavement reconstruction is, you know, included as a byproduct because of other work that they're doing. So in the case of the sewers, yeah, I mean, in the same way they want to redo the sewers and it affects archaeological lands, they're redoing the sewers and it's affecting a historic resource. So we're providing a guideline about what steps they should take to make sure that they're not degrading that historic resource or harming that historic resource.
Right,
So
I mean, do you instruct the DPW to instruct the company that they've hired, because there's our company that's doing
Yeah.
this around town, and also the CC Construction Company. I mean, do you
Yes.
give it to them, or who?
Yes.
I'm kind of asking who's really, and so it's not just on my street. This is going to happen all over the island. So
Yeah.
it's going to be in many other places.
Brian, are you putting your hand up, or are you just adjusting
No,
the
I was
light?
trying to get the light out of my eyes. Sorry.
Okay. So Tom, this gets us into the question of what do we do next with these guidelines? So I'm hearing everyone's very happy with this report. I also want to share that, this report contains components that were paid for by the Community Foundation, and folks who've supported that fund want to contribute money to that fund to print this, which I think is terrific. It would be great if someone wanted to print this for the town. It's public property. Anyone can take it and print it and distribute it. It would be fantastic. And yes, the idea is that the town would take this information and create a set of protocols, which is what they do for all sorts of things. For instance, we have a Wetlands Act on Nantucket. It's part of our town code. It's in addition to Commonwealth to state wetlands protections. And when a municipal agency has a project, they send it out for a bid. The contractor is responsible for upholding local laws and protecting the historic districts. And there was never any guidance about what to do about the pavement, either acknowledging that it was a historic resource and instructing folks about what you do when you encounter this. We have laws that instruct you about what you do when you encounter human remains, which are often buried under the sidewalks in Nantucket. I mean, if there's a sidewalk along a graveyard on Nantucket, an old graveyard, the MHC just assumes that there are human remains under that sidewalk. And we have guidelines both through state law and in Building with Nantucket in mind, and in our local law about what you do if you encounter these sorts of artifacts or remains. So in this case, we have now identified historic pavement as a historic resource and outlined steps that everybody should take, identify the appropriate site-specific standard of treatment, identify the historic material in special conditions, align it with the guidelines for work on historic resources. I'm just going to let Don in. Don Michelle is here. And we've said what they are. We've adapted these for pavement here. So when the consultant is preparing their plan, they have to think about this, the guidelines for work on historic structures. So they're supposed to now look at the area, identify if there's historic pavement, figure out what the right treatment is based on the use need, and then design their project with these 5 principles in mind so that these guidelines are followed. And that will help them avoid these mistakes that we've seen and many other mistakes. If it's a cobblestone road and any, concrete or whatever that they're using, make sure that it's done in a way that protects the need for permeability, protects the concrete, and we've been really specific about what those engineering principles are that need to be followed. So yes, this does no good if it sits on a shelf, but Tom, when the sewer department or the Department of Public Works or any kind of developer is encountering historic pavement as part of their project and they need to dig it up or consider how to treat it, we now have created, the municipality, the town of Nantucket now has a guideline, which we want the select board to accept and to direct consultants to follow these so that they know what to do when they encounter this historic resource. I'm sorry, I just talked for a very long time. I hope that
something.
Yeah, Angus, yeah.
To Tom's question, who gets this? This is really meant to be a manual or a protocol, as you say, and this is something that should be in the forefront with the DPW and anyone else doing um, the work on the public streets. But I think it's a great suggestion for it to be added to the building with Nantucket in mind, because many people do have a sidewalk in front of them and they are affecting the streets and sidewalks. And I think when you apply for a curb cut or any other permit that would alter any of these materials, I think that it would be perfect for there to be, and it would be great for all this to be electronically available, but whether it's a link or a reference to this, that it follows those guidelines, just as in the HDC application, when you wanted to make an alteration, an addition, or new construction, it references that it should follow the guidelines of building with Nantucket in mind. So I think that this should be another reference and should be referenced in any application for alterations.
So I think I agree. And so we'll have to get the word out about this. And that means, working with the HTC, working with our partners. So the work is not done. This is really a new beginning. Now we have this information in a really digestible, very clear format. It's taken us like a year and a half to get it to that point. It's amazing how this work really needed to mature and become a useful guide. I really think it is at the point where it's useful to people. Now we want them to use it. So I would actually like to ask, well, Brian, did you have any other comments? I had started turning to you, and then we got on this discussion about guidelines and all these other things. But I want to ask for a motion to accept this, and then I want to talk about what to do next. But first, I just want to make sure I've heard from everyone about the report. Brian?
Let me just offer one thing. I think the report has a really unique value that I think the drum should be beaten regularly. The standard way of dismissing a lot of this is to say, well, this is no longer applicable. It no longer works for our present needs. And the engineering part of this looks at the traditional method by which these were installed and says this method is both cheap, effective. And that question of, suitable for what purpose? Suitable for, semis running down a highway at 80 miles an hour or a small town center. And I just think that's going to be beaten constantly. I worry about thinking about incorporating into building with Nantucket in mind because the HDC already doesn't pay attention to building with Nantucket in mind. And I think this should stand alone. The primary recipient of this is the town, first and foremost. That's going to set the tone. And so I think letting it stand alone and beating the drum constantly on this, and that it is cheap, effective, and suitable for the streets that have it. I think that's the big battle, but I may be out of date for what's going on island, but that's been the big battle, I thought.
Well, I think we can certainly request of the HTC that they pay attention to building with Nantucket in mind because it is their guidelines. And I think if you ask them, they would say, oh, of course we do. And that, they have a priority. Well, they don't have a priority. They're not prioritizing it, but they have an ongoing interest that they've articulated in updating, and they have a grant to update so that this would be included. Information in this booklet would be included in the update. We could certainly request that. I saw Mickey's hand go up.
Yeah, I'm having it as at least referenced in building with Nantucket in mind, I think is a great thing. But the HTC doesn't really deal with this kind of, they deal with the finished product and what it looks like, but they're not at all involved in the construction technique. So it's sort of good information for people to see while they're dealing with the HTC, but it's not, I don't think it's really within the HTC's world to deal with the methods of this construction, which like this does. And that's, I think, really falls more in line with what the DPW does when they issue curb cuts, and I'm pretty sure they monitor and approve the completion and the construction of the curb cuts. And you know, how people deal with their own property on their private land, you know, that's really up to them. But when they start working on the streets and sidewalks relating to their driveways, I'm pretty sure the DPW gets involved. So that, I think they're the ones that need to sign on to this as much as the HDC.
Oh, Hillary,
Yes.
a question. That's Don. I'm sorry I'm late.
Hi, Don.
Hi.
Happy New Year.
Thank you. Same to you. Thanks to Happy New Year to the team. What about incorporating it in the building permit process, which says that you cannot get an approved building permit unless you've checked off that you've, whatever curb cut or sidewalk work or whatever meets these requirements. And it's subject to a building permit authorization or a completion. I'm not certain which, but it can't get approved and you can't get a certificate of occupancy or something unless it meets these requirements. I understand the HDC is not going to probably look at as closely at the sidewalks and curb cuts, et cetera. And DPW could be one that signs off on it. But in order for you to get a certificate of completion or to get even a building permit, that you've got to show how you're going to meet the requirements of this preservation requirement.
So I think there's two things here. There's private homeowners who want a building permit for work on their home. And sometimes the work on their home, it requires them to dig up the sidewalk and they have to also get a permit for curb cut or whatever. That all goes through the HDC. So the HDC would be the avenue. But for the work on the streets, the DPW actually has to ask the select board. They go to, I think, Erica Mooney, and if it's a big project, it goes to the select board. So it's really the decision path on the public works side that involve publicly owned historic resources is through the select board. And I don't know if the building department is involved in that. It's unfortunate that Holly isn't here, but I think if we have a goal, which is that the select board receives this and accepts this, in other words, endorses it, accepts it, or requests changes, whatever, then they could direct the DPW to develop a protocol, which is actually where we were in April of 2019. So the select board has discussed historic pavement at 2 meetings, April and June of 2019. And in both of those, in the April meeting, they requested that the town, that somebody develop some, but that our commission didn't exist in April 2019. So they requested of the town manager that guidelines, and some standards be developed. And they noted in that meeting that it really went beyond the HDC, because to Mickey's point, it was about the construction methods and the artifacts in and of themselves, not, how things looked or, the appearance being compatible. So that's why, it landed in the DPW's lap. And the DPW went back in June and presented a workflow. We looked at it in our commission too, if you recall that circular flow chart where you identify constituents, identify conflicts, and that is totally compatible with this framework that we are presenting. And I think the two can work together. So I think this objective that we have of engaging with the select board on this is the right way to get at what you're getting at, Don.
Okay.
I don't know if others agree.
No, I was unaware of that. I was thinking more of the homeowner resident, making certain they meet the requirements. To me, if the select board accepts this report, every time we touch pavement or historic landmarks, that the DPW be held accountable to the report. That's what I would expect. But The selectmen have to, they have to agree that this is something that's important for Nantucket.
Yes. Well, could I have a motion to accept this report, these guidelines, the engineering study as our, final to be published work on pavement?
Make a
I
motion.
already did that. Maybe it was premature.
Okay, Tom.
I'll do it again.
Tom is reviving his motion. A second.
Second.
That was from Angus. Okay, so Mickey,
Yes.
Don,
Yes,
David,
Yes.
Clement,
Yes,
Georgia. I saw Georgia say yes, and I am also a yes. So this has been accepted. Did you all see the email I sent to the select board yesterday? I'm seeing people nod.
Yes.
I don't know if
Yes,
okay.
yeah.
yes.
Yeah. Maybe I'll just find
Dawn,
it.
yeah.
Yeah, I sent it to Dawn.
Yeah, I got it.
And maybe just for the record, I'll try to find it. Because what I'd like to agree on is get agreement among our commission about what we're really doing next to get this endorsed by the town and accepted and get the community aware of it. So I said, I'll just read the excerpt. I said, might we now engage again with the subject of preservation of historic pavement? The NHC guidance on preservation and maintenance of historic pavement attached is complete. It wraps together what we presented to Rob McNeil last September in a polished professional format. Early feedback has been glowing. I will ask the NHC to accept this report at our meeting tomorrow at 10 a.m., which I've just done. After that, we will circulate it. And then I said some stuff that was just sort of about the process. Then I said, we must protect historic pavement, and this can be achieved either through the proposed bylaw, which we proposed, or through the select board hearing and accepting this report, and directors and staff developing a protocol for work on historic pavement everyone can live with. This intention was set by the board in April 2019, and I hope with the engineering report and the 6-step guidance, the town can get all on the same page about maintaining and restoring our historic streetscape. Please let me know if you can attend our meeting, this meeting where she didn't get back to me, but obviously she's not here, so she can't attend, and what you recommend for next steps. So what should we be doing next?
Well, I think you said it, Hillary, is to have the selectmen accept this and develop a protocol or develop a process that allows them to make certain any work being done meets the guidelines of the report, and hold accountable the staff and leadership to do that.
So we have this this bylaw. We suggested, and it's the second time we've suggested it, a change to the limitation on road construction. So it's actually not a new bylaw. We would be amending an existing bylaw. And we haven't had any official response to that. It's been on their agenda. In fact, they're meeting tomorrow. And again, they will be talking, so the town meeting is now moved to June. They've reopened the period to accept citizens' warrants. So the select board meeting tomorrow at 5 they will be addressing the budget development, and they'll be addressing the warrant development. And it's going to be a regular topic on their weekly agendas until they close the warrant and submit it. And I don't have the timeline in front of me, so I'm not sure exactly when that is. But at this point, the town manager is recommending the select board not amend this limitation on road construction, and they don't want to take a law to town meeting to protect historic pavement. Now, if we feel that this could always be a citizen's warrant, right? So if a citizen were motivated to submit this, that will open again and someone could submit it. What's important to us is that this be protected, these guidelines be followed, and that the town gets serious about a protocol. So how, I mean, we've asked politely, we can wait, but there are other things that can be done as well, as far as direct advocacy, and direct advocacy is within our mandate, as an independent commission. So what's the pleasure of the commission? Do you want to wait? Do you want to get more active? Do you want to reach out individually? Do you want to talk about it again on January 15th? What's the pleasure of the commission?
Couldn't you get get on the agenda for the select board to actually present this document and then ask them if they are willing to accept it or not?
Well, we've asked, and we have to give it some time. But yes, Mickey, I think that is absolutely the request.
Have you spoken with
why don't we
Matt
just do
Fee
that?
about this privately?
I'm sorry, Georgia, what was the question?
Have you spoken privately with Matt Fee about this?
Well, Matt has been a supporter. He came to one of our meetings, and yeah, he certainly is wanting to see these guidelines accepted by the board. As far as I know, I mean, Matt's an independent thinker, but that's what I think.
I'm just thinking, it's so infuriating to have Libby take this position that, well, essentially she's saying this is all very well and good, but we're going to do it our way. I mean, is that what I'm hearing? Am I wrong?
The problem is we just haven't had feedback, and we just submitted this. So I don't want to be negative. I always want to give people the benefit of the doubt. I mean, George, you just articulated my fear, but I'd like to be positive.
There's the word glacier again.
Well, so we made our request. We've submitted a report. If I don't hear anything this week, why don't I just send another email and confirm that the commission enthusiastically accepted the report, and that we'd like a response. And you know what? I'm sure we'll get one. We'll just have to wait.
Some of this will rely to some degree on what Rob McNeil thinks of this report. Have we personally connected with him about it and gotten a reaction from him?
So let's talk about who we need to send this report to. Now that it's approved, we should send it to Rob. We should send it to the HDC. Obviously, Holly and Andrew have it, but we should officially send it to Holly and Andrew and the planning and the NP and EDC Planning Commission. We should probably send it to the coastal resiliency people, because they're concerned about, flooding and stuff and coastal retreat. We should send it to the sewer department. Anybody else?
Roads and rights of way?
Yeah, right. Roads and rights of way. Definitely. What about the Commission on Disabilities, Nikki?
Yeah.
And
Yeah, I mean, definitely include us.
And the Tree Advisory Committee.
Have you already mentioned the HDC?
Yep.
Yeah.
And I think that's pretty much everybody. The Town Committee, Civic League.
Hillary, would you include the Sconset Civic Association?
Yep.
Please? Thank you.
Sconset. And then all of the preservation groups that have been a part of this, including like the MHC. So that's another point. I want to be sure that the MHC gets this, and that we flag for them and figure out if we need to make a macros entry about this historic resource, because then when they get project notification forms, they can include Pavement as a historic resource that Nantucket locally is cares about preserving.
What about the Sconset Trust? I mean, as far as local preservation groups?
Yep.
Sure. Well, basically, we already have that. We already have it.
Oh yeah, Clement is the.
But you could send it again officially.
Yeah. Okay. Well. And I think once we distribute it officially to everybody, give them time to read it, then we can follow up and say, okay, it's time to have a response, because at this point, we still have requested this bylaw amendment. And at some point, they're going to need to say, we are not doing this, or we are doing this. And if the answer is we are not doing this, then the question is, well, how are we going to protect this pavement and make sure that there's a protocol developed, that your directors recognize it's important to this board, that this is protected, it's important to the commission that this is protected, and just take the conversation from there. It's kind of classic politics.
Well, that's what's driven the whole project to begin with, is that there wasn't a protocol, and it was kind of the whim of whoever was dealing with the material in front of them. And thank goodness, we've recognized it and acted on it. And
yeah,
now I think as many eyes are aware of it, the better. I mean, if someone tried to build a pink and day-glow yellow house, somebody would have something to say about it. So if we have people who are everyone aware of what the standards are, the more eyes with that knowledge in mind, the better.
Great.
Okay.
Okay.
Hillary, every time I've tried to get an organization to make a decision, and you don't know exactly who the decision maker is, and we're dealing with the select board here and saying we need a decision from them to adopt this plan. Usually in organizations, the decision makers will go to their confidants or experts to say, should we do this or not? So my question for us is, who would the select board respect for their opinion? Is it Rob O'Neill, or is it the town manager, or is it who that we ought to work on to be supportive of what we want? So when the select board goes and asks them, what do you think? They're going to say, this is a good idea, because we're recommending it and we think it's a good idea. They already know that. So who do they go to, or what select person do we go to be our cheerleader and the resource that they respect? So they're going to go ask some experts, and I'm using experts with quotes, people that they believe will give them good information to say, yes, we should, or no, we shouldn't. So to me, the two that make sense is, I don't know how much the town manager's influence is with the select board. But if town manager has a lot of influence, we ought to get them on board with us before we ask the select board to approve it, because they're going to go ask the town manager if he's one of those people, or if it's Rob O'Neill and he's the one, I don't know who they go to. That's my question for the teams. Who do you think are the experts or people that the select board would say, should we do this or not? Is it among themselves, or do they go to somebody that's not on the select committee, but is people they'd ask, what do you think? And Rob O'Neill is one that comes to mind, and maybe the town manager. I don't know how much the town influence the town manager has with the select board. Maybe the local politics more than I do. I'm not there enough. So, who are the influencers on the select board? I guess my question is.
So, Dawn is our liaison. So, and she's the chair of the select board. So and we worked very closely with Jason Bridges, because he was the chair when we were doing all of this work. So they are intimately familiar with the issues, and we've been presenting draft guidelines now for a year. So, we presented all of this stuff to Rob McNeil in September. And, I think we're actually fighting a battle of inertia, which is just, this isn't as important as our island home. It's not as important as COVID. Preservation is always like the last thing everybody's thinking about until the thing you care about is gone. So it's our responsibility to, you know, in a sensitive way, recognizing that everyone has a lot of demands on their time, to say, let's not forget about this. We're fortunate because we are in the position where they said it was a priority and they said they wanted guidelines. And I think we've absolutely over-delivered on the request.
Right.
And you know, I think we'll get a response. So let's pursue our plan of circulating it widely. I think let's remember that we can all be incredibly proud of how we've chased down this signature initiative of this commission. And I think, you know, we'll take it into the public phase, and I think we'll get a good result here. It might take a little while. So I added traffic safety to this list because while you were talking, Dawn, about who the people who influence, I thought of some of the folks on the traffic safety board as being quite important. So thank you for mentioning that. And I think that way of thinking is absolutely the right way of thinking. Yes, Tom.
This might be off the wall kind of suggestion, but what about the finance committee? Ultimately, this is going to cost the town.
Yes, and it's interesting that you say that because in our bylaw, you know, of course, that we proposed, we mentioned about how sometimes it will be more expensive, but sometimes it will also be less expensive because you'll be avoiding unnecessarily rebuilding things that don't need to be rebuilt. Does anybody have any strong relationships with people on the finance committee?
I don't, but I'd like to echo what Brian has emphasized, is that this is the more economical way to do things. And so it makes sense all the way round.
Yeah.
So that's a good suggestion, Tom.
Okay. All right, great. Well, let's move on because we have a few more things to cover. We have a very important, I'm just looking at the agenda. So under sidewalks and historic streets, we talked about the APM. We obviously talked about the final report and the ongoing discussions. The Section 106 review, I have the printout. This is the complete streets work that the town and the DPW and the planning director just sent directly to the MHC and didn't bother to check with us. So we need to review this and we need to give our feedback to the MHC, and the MHC will give our feedback to the town. I've of course alerted the town manager that when a project notification goes to the MHC, the NHC should always, always, always be included on whatever materials are sent to the MHC. And we have the opportunity at our discretion to comment to the MHC directly. It would always be our preference to comment internally to the town first and have open communications with the project manager. And let's hope that we can get to that point. But on a future agenda, we will have review of those plans. I have not heard anything to follow up on my request, but it's been a holiday. So that's that. The grant application. Brian Pfeiffer has been here patiently waiting, and he's a very important person to advise us on the grant application. I'm going to share my screen again. How do I share my screen? Okay. This is it. Share. So we have been invited to write this grant. The pre-application said that we wanted to write, we wanted to do a study to create a plan for getting all of our surveys done. I'm looking at this grant application. Now, Holly is a very important part of this. She's our local coordinator. She's going to be running this together with us. And, but I'm kind of feeling like, holy cow, we have to get this grant in by February 9th, and there's a lot of work to be done. We have a subcommittee, which we appointed earlier, which is Tom Montgomery, Don, and myself. And Brian and Betsy Tyler are also helping us and advising us. And we have a call scheduled of that small group along with Holly tomorrow at 9:30 in the morning. So I want to hear a little bit from Brian, because I really, I've never written a grant before. And I am looking, I'm just trying to get the page where it says the narrative statement and the work program. So this is what we have to do. Attach a project narrative. Discuss each item thoroughly and concisely. Define project goals. Explain how the proposal will meet these goals. Prepare a complete project description by phase. Define personnel working on each phase, what they will be doing, their relationship to specific project goals. Describe the specific methodology to be used in each phase of the project. Identify products that will result from each phase. Incorporate meetings with the MHC into the appropriate phase. Consult with the MHC staff on typical or required work plans for your project type. Outline the time frame. It has to start in July of this year and complete within a year. Narrative statement. Explain in a concise statement how the proposed project relates to the past, current, and future preservation activity in the community. Describe the results of the proposed project will be incorporated in the community planning process. The extent to which the results will be made available and used by the general public. Provide any other information on the project that will be useful to the MHC in making the final decisions. Address all applicable selection criteria. And then the budget information. So this actually, I don't know if everybody is aware of it, but this became kind of an 11th hour fire drill in our last application, and our pre-application was almost derailed over this question of budget. So this is something that I think really needs to be developed by Andrew and Holly. Fortunately, I know that unless it gets changed, the funds are in the budget request, and that budget request has been approved by the NPEDC. So this is all about the budget sheet. So I'm focused, I hope I'm focusing correctly on this work program, the project narrative, the goals, and the description by phase as being what is really important, and we need to kind of get organized around. Brian, what kind of advice do you have for us?
At this point, I haven't gone through this with you all piece by piece. MHC has become excessively bureaucratic. So I would make sure that everything on the list gets ticked off, even if it's just a very simple one. But I think the main thing is, at this point, you've all talked about the priority, and it seemed to me you want to catch up on 20th century buildings. Is that correct?
No, actually, what we are doing is the pre-application. How we define the project was to create a study plan where
sections of the island and thematic topics that are missing.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, that's going to be compelling. The thing that will have to be hit, I think, two really important things. One is to demonstrate that, Nantucket has fallen way behind, having once been far ahead, so that you don't have the kind of information that other towns do to make decisions. And then secondly, all the legwork you've done to get this entangled around various town agencies, to get their support to recognize this as integral will be really persuasive to MHC. I think for the budgeting part of it, I don't know if Holly's the person to do it, to do a little bit of legwork, or maybe you've already done it. I think MHC has consistently, or more recently, sort of set values and prices as to what these things should cost. And if they have, it'd be useful to know, because if they set an hourly fee of $25 maximum, it's going to be a very different set of choices as to who carries out this work, than if they allow a higher fee or set a kind of by building or by section or by plan allowance. It may not apply to this, but I'd snoop around to see if there are those things before forming the budget. It'd also be nice to get your hands on a successful planning application they've funded for a kind of general developing a plan. It'd be nice to see what they thought was worth funding. I don't know if they'll give that to you.
Yeah, I mean, I'm noticing that they want to have you know, information about who the specific methodology to be used in each phase of the project, and define the personnel working on each phase. Well, we're going to be using these funds to hire a consultant. So I guess we would just say, you know, specific consultants TBD, but to meet the following requirements, right?
Mhm. Yes, they even say you can't pre-select the consultant. You've got to put the notice out for soliciting consultant or applications for the position.
Yes. Yeah. You know, I'm not sure there's so much for us to talk about at this point, because we have this working group and we're going to be reporting back to the commission. Does anybody else have anything to say about this grant at this point?
I'm not part of the subcommittee, but everything that Brian suggested makes total sense. Having good examples of what's gone through, all the details. Okay.
Well, we've reached out to the MHC to schedule time with them to advise us on the grant application. We can ask them for examples of successful grants. We have our steering committee. You know, I'm going to ask, I don't know if he'll be available, but Marty Hilton is fantastic at writing grants and has an excellent record. So I'm going to ask if he might also be able to advise us. And our next meeting is on January 15th, Friday, January 15th at 10. So I want to have a draft of this by then. I'm sure Holly will think I'm crazy, but I'm just thinking about the, you know, we had such a fire drill with that pre-application because people, you know, we can't sign off on this. We have to, Andrew Worth and Dawn Holgate are the people who need to sign off on this, and they need time to think about it and catch any problems with it and tell us where the problems are, and then we need time to resolve it. So so I think we can't like wait until the last 2 weeks to get this done, because people need to give feedback. Okay. All right. Okay, other business, 2021 goals, feedback and improvement. So, you know, I work mostly in the private sector, and in management, you always like to have like one-to-one end of the year reviews, and you like to do like a 360 review and all of that. Well, I actually wrote to the commission, the open meeting law line, and said, can I have like one-to-one conversations with private conversations with people and get feedback on what we're working on, how I'm doing as chair, how we're doing as commission? And basically the answer was no. That would be a really bad idea, and it might be a violation of open meeting law, because if I talk to each of you and then you talk to each other, that would be a serial conversation. And also any like information about reviews of chairperson performance would be needs to be public. So I can't do that, but I do think all good organizations should reflect on their performance, reflect on their goals, go through some sort of goal setting activity. So we have half an hour left of our meeting, and I want to use the time to think about what we've accomplished in 2020 compared to what we wanted to accomplish. How effective we're being, not just like how hard we're working, but how effective we're being. And then think about, maybe we can look at our project sheet where we keep track of everything, and just go through these priorities, and maybe, you know, set our goals for what do we want to have at the end of 2021. What do we want to feel that we've been able to get done? I'd love, I see Tom's hand going up.
First of all, I think that our final report on the preserving, you know, the historic pavement is definitely our shining accomplishment so far. But I also think that the thing with the surveys that we're gearing up now to do, I think would would go a long way as one of our other accomplishments for 2021 if we can get it done.
Surveys, I agree.
I think one of the goals for next year was complete phase one, get the grant, CLG grant, and then or the grant for doing the work and execute the surveys. So execute
Yep.
that work be the goal for next year. One of them.
Yeah. Yes.
Or this year.
Big goals. Yeah.
There's a lot of work involved in that, just that alone.
Yeah.
Yes.
This is Clement. I think that also tying into the surveys, which is a huge amount of work, would be if we could spearhead, it would not be for next year, but spearhead the idea of this educational, what did we call it, exhibit about preservation on Nantucket through the history. I think a lot of people would find that fascinating, myself included. And I also think we should begin on the archaeological aspect of our mission. But those are beginning things.
I'm glad that Clement just brought that up. I was going to say that at the end. I think that the artifact thing is something that everybody on the island could really identify with. It's something that we're all interested in and everybody's aware of. And I think if we brought that more into focus this year and just worked on it in the next year or two, I think that could be a major accomplishment as well. I mean, where else can you say to, let's say, your kids or your wife, oh, I'm going out for a couple of hours and look for an arrowhead and have a 50% chance of coming home with one? Not many places.
Wow. I saw Mickey's hand go up.
Yeah, it's, in terms of our goals, I think that one area that we could work on is helping to update and make more accessible the Building with Nantucket in Mind document. And that obviously involves working with the HTC. It's really their thing, but I think they would probably appreciate some help, outside help, because they just don't have the time to do it themselves. So that's someplace that needs some review and upgrading.
Yeah, I agree. We've just, Mary Bergman, or I think it's Mary, the NPT just joined our meeting, which is actually perfect.
It's Mary.
It's Mary. Mary, I'm so glad you're here now because we're just turning to our discussion of setting some big goals for 2021. And what, if we fast forward to the end of the year, what do we want to look back on and say we either accomplished or made significant progress on in 2021? And the things that folks mentioned were the surveys of structures and becoming a certified local government, that we really got the grant and got a program to do this survey plan underway. Clement mentioned tying into the educational exhibit about preservation, and I actually have an update about that, but I'm going to hold that to the end. Tom mentioned making some progress or putting some shape around the archaeological aspect, that's a very important historic resource on Nantucket, and people will be interested in that. Mickey just mentioned helping to update Building with Nantucket in Mind, which of course is an HCC initiative, but would they accept our help and could we help move things along? It does feel to me that we've established ourselves as a group that has the capacity and the ability to get some of this thoughtful, pretty intense work done and get it out there for other people to use. So we're a service organization. I mean, we are doing research and providing information for other groups that are regulatory to use. That's so far the list of potential big audacious goals for 2021. I'm sure there are more. What else, everybody? Angus, you must have some things that you think about when we could fast forward to 2021, besides being done with coronavirus, what else do we wish?
Having the the guidelines that we've set in this last document that we've been talking about is so important. It's just been a missing link, but because we were so far ahead of the rest of the nation in preservation and setting a having a whole historic district encompass the island, we kind of sort of rested back on our heels, and we've sort of lost contact, I think, with building with Nantucket in mind, and what preserves Nantucket, and tying into that the archaeology, which I don't think has really been on the forefront. So I totally agree with Mickey about the HDC and reinvigorating building with Nantucket in mind, and obviously they need help with it. They're just completely bogged down with the week-to-week work, and I think that they would all welcome a new revised version, hopefully electronically available. But the survey is just so important to preservation. So that I would like to see be our primary goal to achieve this coming year. We have an ambitious list. We have more things than we could accomplish in a year, and all of them are important. And I think there'll be things that come along that we'll have to prioritize as we go through the year. But the survey, I think, and moving forward with CLG is paramount in my mind, along with getting the HDC back to building with Nantucket in mind. There's just so much just driving around, the island, that I see it's such blatant, aversions from building with Nantucket in mind, that the houses are getting built on top of every hilltop as though no one had ever thought about it before. And it's so discouraging. So,
it is. I totally agree. I saw Georgia put her hand up.
Yeah, I'm on board with with what Clement was saying. I think such an important part of this is public feeling about it. How the public feels about preservation is such a big element of getting people to agree to build with Nantucket in mind, and getting people to agree with limiting the way roads are rebuilt and the way curbs are handled. And so I really like the education element. And so my part of that is, why don't we, I really like the concept of doing a preservation exhibit. And I was struck by that comment you made at the very beginning of the booklet we just put out about 1919, these very forward-thinking preservationists didn't want the town to pave over the cobblestones. People were thinking about that 102 years ago, and thank heaven they were. And thank heaven they thought about it even before Walter Beinecke came along. Because somebody has to keep reminding people of the economic and aesthetic value of all this stuff, and especially the economic value. I keep saying this: if we looked like Cape Cod, nobody would spend all this money to come over here and look at us. And I think that having exhibitions on preservation and the continuing value of preservation, not obviously economically, but the continuing virtue in preservation is something worth doing. And I would really like to work on that.
So I want to distill this into a couple themes that I'm hearing. I know we haven't heard from everyone, but I'm hearing about helping the HDC and helping with helping reinforce and maintain these guidelines that have been so important to Nantucket. And that I would put surveys and building with Nantucket in mind as being the two pillars of that initiative, because surveys help us understand and preserve what is old that we have, and the guidelines, and making sure that they are being understood, followed, disseminated by the community, are important to making sure that what is new is built, or when anything that is old is going to be altered, that, you know, there's some, we're staying within the bounds of what we've said is appropriate for a National Historic Landmark. Then there's this other component, and these two things reinforce each other, which is the public and the sentiment and appreciation for preservation in the public. And I hear people talking about connecting with archaeological resources and connecting with the history of preservation and education. So I think that that makes a lot of sense, because we're kind of talking about the two sides of the coin, right? The supply and the demand, with the surveys and the Building with Nantucket in mind kind of informing the HDC, but the sentiment of the community informing what people want to build and what people value and what people know about. So I want to share a couple conversations I've been having. So first, an update about the museum exhibit. And I want to invite Mary to make some comments in a minute here, Mary, if you can. But we will have this on our agenda for January 15th. We will have a project plan, a vision for this museum exhibit that has been developed by Esther Lee. I've been working with her since the summer to help her develop it. She's really been doing a lion's share of the work. I know Mary has also had the opportunity to comment on it, but that's pretty much ready. And Esther Lee will be with us on the 15th to talk about it. And we will be wanting to form a project team that consists of, that brings together, part of the benefit of this exhibit is not just the end result, but the process of bringing together all of the preservation oriented organizations on the island together. And the Historical Commission has an opportunity to, you know, coordinate that and join these commissions, unify these commissions with the municipal function of preservation. And I think that's a really, really important role that only we can play, because we are the municipal body here. But setting some kind of goal around broadening the discussion. We can't just have the same people talking about preservation all the time. And that brings me to the second conversation I wanted to share, which was feedback from Ben Norman, who can't be with us today. His feedback that he feels like, you know, the younger generation and scrappier people in the community, that, you know, that the people talking about preservation are the people living in, you know, really nice old houses with nice furnishings and everything. But that there's this whole populist group on Nantucket that also cares about authentic things, but doesn't necessarily think about that as preservation. So I guess the big goal will be that maybe we could have is around popularizing or making preservation accessible to, you know, people who just care about authentic things, care about sustainability, care about green building. So I want to put that out there, that idea of how do we set a goal for ourselves around bringing together all of the preservation groups with the municipality to speak really to our community as a whole. I see Brian's hand going up.
This is not directly applicable because you're a public commission, but I may have mentioned this before. In Cambridge, the Cambridge Historical Commission, a historical society, which is the private society, had just these problems of being sort of out of date, seen as people living in grand houses, not much interested in the rest of the city. And they hired a new director about 4 or 5 years ago, who persuaded the board to stop just being inbred. And so now when the time for new members comes up, they advertise, and they really go out of their way to advertise throughout the city for people who have an interest in history who'd like to serve on the board. And then they interview them. And over the last 3 years, I think they've added 5, maybe 4 or 5 younger people who do not have traditional preservation backgrounds, who have some offbeat interests in more recent history. And it has totally enlivened the organization and the nature of what goes on there. I don't know. I mean, for instance, something like NPT might think about doing that. The Historical Commission is different because it's a public body, but I think so much time is spent wringing our hands about other people's perception of us, and not enough time in actively going out and trying to talk to them, trying to find them. And I don't mean that as an accusation. I'm just saying that's true of all of us. And I think if there's some way, if the commission really wants to look at broadening the mandate and pulling in people who have a different take on what's worth preserving, I think it requires some active pounding of the pavement, advertising, something to go find those people who wouldn't normally step up. And in Cambridge, what it's done is it's added, as a couple people who are high-tech, Kendall Square computer types, and they've brought tremendous expertise plus their interest to this organization. But they wouldn't have gotten there if the organization hadn't chased them.
That's a great thing to share, Brian. I want to ask David, you're probably the youngest person on our commission. You live here year round, you work as a realtor. So you meet people who don't necessarily think about preservation the way we think about it. What do you think?
I mean, it's kind of a lot to kind of attack in one swoop, but I'll do my best. So what Brian said, I find really interesting, and it's kind of what motivated me to join this commission, was just kind of looking around at who was on the commission, who's on these types of commissions. It's typically folks that have been on Nantucket for decades. And there's no young people, with the exception of maybe Ben and myself. And I'm only 24. So, I have a background in US history and politics as well, which kind of motivated me to get involved in local government like I do. And I think it's a great point. I think that there are a lot of realtors that aren't prioritizing preservation, or that are making kind of unfounded promises about what you can and can't do to a home in the course of a showing. I mean, I've seen several instances just in my kind of young career of kind of just some misrepresentation. And I just think it's important to, and kind of my goal for 2021 is to kind of focus on this and noticing trends of, price and everything on Nantucket, and just across the country too. There's a lot of instances where housing is becoming unaffordable, and people are being forced out to suburbs and bigger cities, or on Nantucket, away from the island. And I would like to see, and we've talked about this at length, that oftentimes historic structures are affordable housing. I know of several homes in the downtown area where there are restaurant workers housed, and there's a lot of pressure for those landlords and owners to sell. So frankly, with kind of a long way to a short point, is that I think it's important for folks that are up and coming in this community to kind of step up and acknowledge that they want to keep Nantucket the way that it is, and has been so meticulously maintained over the course of centuries. And so whatever role I can play in kind of educating folks that it's just my clients, I'm constantly engaged with them about, kind of what we're working on in the Historical Commission. And actually folks like it. Folks, I think, really, come to Nantucket, kind of like Giorgio says often, they pay all this money to come here because it's unique. And I think that if there's anything that the younger generation can do to help kind of push this agenda forward, I'd certainly like to kind of lead the way, in whatever way that I can, whether it be talking to friends of mine or colleagues kind of in a similar age range that, might not think about preservation every other week like I do. So I'm grateful for the opportunity, and I've learned a ton just in this year, kind of reflecting on 2020, and honored to have all these experts here on the panel at each week, kind of pushing me along. So thank you for everyone's help, and I hope I kind of addressed what you were hoping to get at, Hillary. And I would like to play a role in this coming year to kind of further this agenda. And I think education is the most important part, and community outreach as well.
Yeah, and with the realtor community too. I mean, I really hear what you're saying about people are interested, but they don't really know, and there's huge pressure. And I'm just thinking about how our commission as the municipal commission, I mean, Brian, we actually have the benefit that the select board does advertise openings. Of course, we have a full commission, and I hope it stays full, but you know, we are a public commission. Everyone is welcome here. We do not fundraise, so we're not building a board based on, you know, who has giving capacity and whatnot. We really want it, you know, we want the every man and every woman here showing up at our meetings and being a part of what we're doing.
If I may,
Yeah.
one of the things that I participated in a self-study for the museum I used to work for, and we had a man who headed up the Ford Museum in Dearborn absolutely blow a cork at us because we all were talking about education. And he said, you see every visitor here as an empty vessel to be filled with your interests. Mm-hmm. And it was a cruel and really accurate observation of how we were approaching it. And I think it's we all get involved in preservation, and to the point of, you know, the sense of, is it limited to people living in grand houses or whatever it is? I think insofar as the commission has applicants, you have a different situation. In other towns in the state, the existing commission members, the board of selectmen, other groups, interview the applicants, talk with them about why they want to participate, what their view is, what they'd like to bring to it, et cetera. And they have a real conversation. You don't, because, well, you do for the historical commission, but the HDC is by election. And that seems to me one opportunity, one place to start to listen to other points of view and even encourage people to say, we know you don't share all of our point of view, but why don't you show up and talk with us? Because, you know, we do need to have that. I think it does involve not giving all of you the assignment, saying you've got to go talk with people. I think it really is, I think you've got to go out and listen, because I already feel the geezer myself that things that I thought were beneath contempt when I first studied architectural history, my younger colleagues are fascinated by, and now I have to pause and say, right, they are of an age that one can look at them, whereas I think of them as not very good buildings, not very new, and not very interesting from my childhood. So
yeah,
I think that's
history
important.
Is living.
Yeah.
Mary, I see you have your hand up.
Mm-hmm. I think this is a great discussion. I think that the goals set forth are good ones. I like the discussion around building with Nantucket in mind as not just updating it, because I think what's in there is really, really very good, but could be presented in a more user-friendly way. On the topic of youth, I think that I think about the people on this island who are seeing things come down and structures get altered and feel like it's a piece of the island that was taken away from them before they had a chance to even try to save it. You know, these are people who have yet to be able to enter the real estate market and are seeing, you know, great structures come down. So there are people out there who care, who are young, who I think could be allies. And maybe that's a matter of, you know, is it this commission, you know, waving the flag and getting people interested about a certain building that's coming in front of the HDC. I think we're going to see a lot of focus on the youth hostel as that moves forward. There are these buildings that grip people and people are interested in. I like Brian's comment about the recent past, because I think that 20th century architecture is our biggest challenge on Nantucket. And it's very difficult. This happened to me where I heard the HDC discussing a structure that could come down that was roughly my age. And I thought, well, that's not all that old, you know, but I could see when it's tied to your lifespan, it does kind of pull at you. I was talking to a woman who's a curator of rare books, and she said, well, I said all the rare, the date that she set for what she considered to be a historic book was 1940, because that's when, you know, that was her life. She didn't want she didn't want to be older than anything that was historic. And I think that historic preservation forces us to think about our own lives and our own time on this planet. So I don't know how you wrap those big ideas into action, but it's something I think about a lot too.
Well, oh, sorry, Tom. Thank you, Mary. Tom, I see you have a hand up.
Quickly, I know we're running out of time. In terms of educating the public about preservation, as you were mentioning earlier, I'm on the Nantucket Shellfish Board, and we put out a very nice, glossy, very well done, 63-page manual, which just has all kinds of really interesting graphs and pictures and stuff that goes on right here in Nantucket. If we possibly came up with something like that and put that out, that might be another project that we're gonna, this thing here has really taken off because of that thing. We leave it in real estate offices. We leave it in downtown at the Information Bureau. We leave it in all kinds of guest houses and things like that, and people pick it up, and it gets them interested in Nantucket and the waterfront and the water and water quality and conservation. And so why couldn't we do that with preservation? Just a thought.
Right. I think it's a really good thought. I mean, I think the goal that we're all circling around that's resonating is this idea of broadening the conversation about, forget the word preservation. I mean, we're talking about saving the living history and the reminders that are all around us physically on Nantucket, and protecting that and conserving that. And recognizing that there's many different voices and different perspectives that enrich the conversation when they can be at the table, but they might need an invitation. And, you know, they might also need something tangible that they can pick up, like what Tom just showed. They might need an event. I also want to share, as far as projects that we have going on, wonderful. I'm just wonderfully excited about the Arthur Cooper Monument. So this was something that I consider myself to just be project managing. It was an idea that came from a woman who lives on Angola Street. Fran Cartoonan introduced me to her, and she wanted to create this monument. But a wonderful conversation has happened with the land bank, first of all, who can be a terrific partner and who's welcoming this monument in their park. So getting to know them and work with them to collaborating around this project, but also the Museum of African American History. So I had a conversation yesterday with Jackie Healy, their head of external affairs. And she is really excited about this project now. So they are going to help plan the event to install this monument, dedicate the monument, but also maybe talk to the schools about some curriculum and programming, and just broadening this discussion about the history of Nantucket with the different groups that are active on Nantucket. I learned from her that there's a Black Homeowners Association on Nantucket. I mean, it makes sense, but I never thought that there was a Black Homeowners Association. So I'm thinking about how there are these different groups with people who don't really think of themselves as wanting to be, hang on one. Sorry, there's lunchtime now happening in our meeting. So, that they wouldn't necessarily want to show up to a preservation meeting, but they really care about these houses, to David's point. So I'm gonna, Mary, if you're still there, and if we could continue this discussion, how can the Historical Commission and the NPT work together as leaders here to create events, create materials, broaden the conversation, and have a big goal for 2021 around preservation as affordable housing, preservation as living history, preservation as belonging, young people belonging in the community, that we, identifying our community. How can we have activities and work together and set some goals in 2021? I see the NPT as being really important here.
Yeah, definitely. I have to think about this a little bit, but I think that I have found it to be incredibly successful when you are able to look at the island as a whole, or communities and neighborhoods as a whole, instead of moving away from individual structures. And I do think that that is something that this body would be able to do particularly well. You know, not owning any property, but really being more about the planning of the whole community. And I think looking at the recent past would be something that would be very, very helpful. Helping people to understand that it's not just, you know, the 1840s whaling village. That Nantucket, I get worried sometimes when I hear people discussing, you know, wanting to keep Nantucket a certain way, because who are you keeping Nantucket, you know, nice for? And I think we need to think about how is our community expanding and changing, hearing the origin stories of people who are new to the community and how do they see themselves as being part of this community and being part of Nantucket history. I don't know how to, you know, create a structure from that, but I think that, you know, it can be done.
Angus, did you have a hand up?
I know we're just about to end the meeting, but I feel badly that I didn't build on what Clement was saying about education, because it is so important. That's really what is going to save the island, is people knowing what we have. So on top of everything, it's so important to be reaching out to as many different groups as possible. And I'd like to see this preservation on Nantucket being a mixer, you know, of all of us getting to know who we are and the people we don't know, you know, like the Black Homeowners Association, like, you know, all the groups that for as long as Nantucket's been around, who have contributed to its preservation. Whether it's the, you know, the owners on Main Street who wanted to save Main Street, you know, all through our history. And I think that's so important. And hopefully that'll be a venue that will bring the whole community, the youth included. So anyway, I just wanted to add that.
And Hillary, really quickly, why not have an online dedication of the Arthur Cooper Memorial?
Well, I'm really hoping we can have a personal dedication if we have it in July. I mean, we will. There will be a dedication, and we're going to plan it. And I'm going to reach out to you about being part of that steering committee. But you know, I want the MAAH to have a huge role in that, and that's why I was so happy to talk with Jackie. So that's definitely in the works. I mean, are there? Oh yes, Georgia.
I'm sure you could get NCTV to film it as well. I just wanted to, I had one other last little thought, and it was from about 20 years ago, so it's dated, but it's interesting. I heard Susie Locke, she was at that point selling real estate, and she said, I overheard her telling somebody else, they were talking about people who wanted to buy antique houses and then gut the interiors and do them over again. And this was horrifying to her. And her comment was, people talk about wanting to create a Martha Stewart interior when they don't realize that what they've bought is what Martha Stewart is trying to recreate. And I think that's so true. What we have in these antique houses and their interiors is what people like Martha Stewart are trying to recreate. We have a genuineness, and we have an authenticity in old houses that we ought to try to be celebrating. That's what the NPT was doing when it had its kitchen tours all those years. The idea being you walk people through the antique houses and you show them the value in cooking, you know, in fireplaces that had warming ovens next to them, and in old beams and in old cabinet work and stuff that you don't have to rip out. I mean, okay, rip out your kitchen if you have to have a modern kitchen, but you don't have to tear everything else out and then rebuild it so it looks like last year's Architectural Digest idea of an antique house. So, I mean, that's something we really have to keep remembering, that we've got the original.
Well, should we try to have, I agree, Georgia, should we try to have some programs for realtors? I mean, what is it? We have really limited resources. Okay, so we're all volunteers, but you know, we could ask the planning department or there are different groups in the town. The town has lots of money. We could ask them for money to do programs if they felt that it was, you know, fit into some priority. Or we could just do it on a volunteer basis, or do it with the NPT. But I mean, David, can we work with can we do something for realtors to help you all with your challenges?
Yeah, I mean, it'd be, it'd be interesting to see what it would ultimately look like. But, I think that there are realtors on the island that would take interest. I really do. I think there's some that wouldn't, certainly. But I think that just this last year, we've noticed such, crazy traction and price going so high, kind of leaving all of us scratching our heads because in March we were thinking that it was apocalyptic, with no movement on the market. But there's so much property changing hands that I think that everyone in the real estate community on Nantucket would kind of like to take a minute to just kind of sit back and really think about it. I think that's kind of what's happening. It's just things are moving so quick that it's so hard to keep up. I'll also say that I know that, timing is kind of probably everything with this because, we're really busy in the summer, whereas now we have a little bit more free time. So I think structuring it, at the right time of year is important too. But I think it's a great idea and it's something that I would be happy to work on. Hillary, I know you're tied up. No worries.
Sorry, I am hearing you, but I'm also trying to manage my household who seems to think that I'm done with my meeting when I'm not. So, I would like to, I see Brian has a hand up and I hope, can we stay on real estate for a little while, Brian? Is that what you want to comment on?
I'll try to be brief and forgive me, I'm a broken record on this. I think the idea of talking to realtors is great, but I think it's like a market product development. I think you've got to talk with people quietly first to ask the question, how does this affect you? What are your interests? And not too typically preservationists cook up a program to do to the realtors, as opposed to talking with the realtors, learning what they care about, what they don't care about, what they disagree with, and then saying, can we form a partnership with you because we'd like to present our issue. We'd like to understand your issue. David, you may disagree with me. I think there's got to be a lot of legwork because it's really the individual listening to people that's going to be the persuasion over time.
Brian, I agree. Thank you.
Very, very good point. Mary, is NPT plan? What are you planning for 2021, and how can we make sure that we complement what you do, fill in the gaps, reinforce what you're doing? And is there anything around realtors, programs for realtors?
Nothing about, so in the past, NPT has given, has spoken to people through NAREB for continuing education credits. I think though that it is really what David and Brian have been hitting at, which is what are the questions that realtors need answered? And how can we meet them? I've had the thought of wanting to find somebody who specializes in historic homes that's not on Nantucket, who is doing really well. And I would love to bring them to talk to real estate agents, because I don't know that there's anyone on Nantucket that is really just having their focus on truly historic properties and encouraging people to restore them and not gut them. I'd love to hear from somebody who is, and who's also doing, is successful. We do sort of on a continual basis house consultation program where we'll meet with homeowners. I've gotten calls from real estate agents who maybe they have a particularly interesting historic property and we'll do research on that property for them. Sometimes Angus, who's a member of our board, will go and talk to a new homeowner to look at a historic property and see, what's the historic fabric that's worth saving. We, as it's the 5th of the year, don't have our whole year planned out yet, but when we do have our calendar, I can send that out to this group as well.
David.
Yeah, I also want to point out, I think that educating realtors is kind of like a good first step. And Mary, I think it's an awesome idea to bring in someone who kind of just focuses on historic structures. But I also think that, while it's important to educate the realtors, I think that there's also this demand from, whether it be real estate investors or new home buyers that are kind of flooding the market in Nantucket. It'd be nice if we could kind of target those people as well, because these are often the people that are kind of coming in saying, like Georgia was saying, coming into the house and, totally gutting it and, and all the history's gone. So it's there's obviously a symbiotic relationship between the realtor and the new home buyer. So I think good for, getting the realtors to kind of, liaise the new home buyers through the process, while also, highlighting and emphasizing, if it's a historic home, what you can and can't do with it, kind of the process, what shouldn't be done. I think it's important to focus on those folks as well, and that's what I try and do in my personal business. But I know that a lot of other realtors are spread a little thin to kind of walk each client through that process.
Well, I'm wondering if we might want to have a small group led by David that can reach out to, that can basically go on a listening tour with the realtors, find some prominent realtors and go on a listening tour and hear, well, what are your concerns? What, and maybe come up with some things that we might do or might provide, because I agree, it has to be, we can't just go in there like preaching, and we can't go in there making a lot of assumptions. It's the power of listening is critical.
I'd love to kind of spearhead that. So anyone else who wants to join?
Yeah.
Some fun conversations.
Well, maybe, we've reached
part of that.
I'm sorry, who was that?
I said Mary Bergman. I'd love to be part of that in my unofficial study.
Oh, great. So we're reaching the end of our meeting. We've gotten a bunch of ideas for big goals for 2021 out. I'm hearing, continuing to try to work with the HCC. I honestly don't know how we do that, but I think there's some people here that might know better than I do. I heard that there's an interest in connecting with the next generation on Nantucket, and bringing them, listening to what they're interested in and what they think about when they think about Nantucket culture, old houses, the cultural landscape, the built environment. I'm also wondering if maybe there isn't a way to invite some of these folks that might want to serve into some training and mentoring so that they can serve. I could see as a municipal commission that being a wonderful thing for us to do. That we might continue to select projects like the Arthur Cooper Memorial and this preservation exhibit that fill in some gaps and connect the public to the other nonprofits and to the municipality. That might be a really good goal, good way to think about this set of activities. And I'm going to propose that people, over the next week, or the remainder of this week, it's Tuesday, jot down some ideas about 2021. Your New Year's resolutions for the Historical Commission, your ideas for what we might want to memorialize as our big goals for the year, and send them to me, and I'm going to compile them and then share them at our next meeting. And then maybe let's kind of come up with a slate of big goals for the year, and then a series of activities or initiatives that if we do these things, we will be likely to achieve these goals. Because that's how we get stuff done. You set a goal, and then you set some key results that if we achieve these key results, we should achieve these big goals. And does that sound good to everyone? Like a good way to end? I'm seeing people nodding. I'm seeing Angus put his hand up. Did you want to say something, Angus? Or you're muted.
I think that's a great idea. But before we close out the year, I want to thank you, Hillary, for such outstanding work. You talked about, us each doing our own personal review and review of the chair. And I think you've just been a rock star. So thank you for all of your work and dedication. And I think I speak for the rest of the group. But anyway, I just wanted to put that out there. Thank you.
Thanks you all. It's so nice to hear. It's a labor of love, and I just love working with you all. You all are awesome. And you all are doing a ton too, and everyone's spending the time and the great brains and your wonderful networks and everything and all the support. It's just fantastic. So I don't see any more hands going up. So please go to your computers, write down your NHC New Year's resolutions, send them to me. We're going to meet on the 15th at 10 a.m. And we're going to have some, big goals, more conversation about surveys. We're going to hear from Esteli about this exhibit that she's planning. And I think we have some other things on the list as well. Oh, and hopefully we'll have a response from the select board about our sidewalk report. And I'll ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you, Tom.
Second.
Thank you, Clement. Mickey? David?
Aye.
Angus?
Aye.
Georgia?
Aye.
Don? Thank you, Don. And I'm also an aye, and we'll see everyone in a couple weeks. Have a great start to your new year. Be healthy, be well.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Aye.